This meeting is being recorded.
It would be really useful in the chat, which you can find at the bottom of the screen if you click on the icon, if you could put your name and your parish or your town council, and ideally an email address. And we'll leave cameras on at the moment unless we have problems on bandwidth. If people are having problems with the reception, then we'll ask people to switch their cameras off. And I would ask you all to mute yourselves whilst I take you through the first part of this presentation, and then after that we'll be inviting comments.
Buses.
Okay, hopefully you can all see a Somerset Bus Partnership logo in the top left-hand corner. Somerset Bus Partnership was set up by Tony Rees some 3 years ago nearly now, and we are the largest bus group representing all of Somerset, and we're recognised in that role by Somerset Council, and we work closely with Somerset Council on bus issues, not necessarily always agreeing with them, but working towards trying to improve bus services across Somerset. Just so you know, your local representatives in South Somerset, Tony Rees, who I mentioned earlier, is the co-chair for South Somerset. Linda Snelling, who I don't think is on the call this evening, but many of you will know her name from the posts she puts on, particularly on the Taunton bus user group. In Taunton, we have John Hassel, who's one of our co-chairs, and David Northey. David is also chair of Travel Watch Southwest. In Sedgemoor, we have Richard Morgan, and in Mendip, Rosa is on the call, and there is me, Peter Travis. So I'm going to take you through the briefing presentation we've got, and we've got quite a lot of important news which has just come out today. So we'll talk about the targets which we now have for those bus routes, which we've been I'm sure all of us pressing for. This afternoon, Somerset did give us some indications on what those targets are. But just going back in time, buses were the forgotten form of transport, disregarded and discounted by the powers that be in government and even in the council here, because during the austerity years, buses in Somerset did suffer quite badly from bus cuts, as many of us will be well aware, such that by the time of our submission of our bus service improvement grant, which was in November 2021, Somerset acknowledged that they had the worst rated bus service in the whole country. But when they put in that bid, they did get some funding. One of the reasons, as I said, why buses were not very good and still have a long way to go in Somerset is that, as you will see, Somerset spends a lot less per head on its buses than do our neighbouring rural councils. And it was interesting during the unitary elections in last year, we put out a bus manifesto which said that over the course of the current council, we needed to see expenditure on buses in Somerset at least get up to the average for the Southwest. And I'm glad to say 2/3 of the elected councillors endorsed that manifesto. So the majority of councillors on Somerset Council would like to spend more money on buses and are committed to doing that. But we do recognise that Somerset is facing a major funding crisis. It was bad enough this year. It's going to be even more difficult for Somerset with the new budgetary year beginning April next year, which is one of the reasons why we're here this evening, because there is a crunch point for the money that's available for funding buses, and it's going to be at the end of March, with the suggestion at the moment that unless Somerset is able to fund these buses, First Bus is either going to cut them dramatically or withdraw them. But the good news is that the attitude to buses changed dramatically. Boris Johnson, love him or hate him, he did introduce Bus Back Better and did signal a real sea change in the approach to buses. One of the reasons for that is the climate emergency and the role that buses in switching people out of private cars onto more sustainable transport, including buses, is important. And then, of course, we've had the cost of living crisis, and buses have very dramatically become increasingly the very affordable way to travel. The government introduced a £2 fare in January of this year, which means that bus fares are one of the few items that has actually gone down, and for the routes we're talking about this evening, gone down quite dramatically if you're going from one end of the route to the other, because these are primarily long rural routes. And one of the advantages of Rishi Sunak abandoning HS2 is that he had money to actually extend that cap from the end of October through to the very end of next year. So we've got certainty over bus fares across Somerset through to the end of 2024. And of course, within Taunton, there is a special £1 bus fare, which is going to continue, I think it's till 2025. And for those of us of a certain age, which includes me, we have the senior card, which means that after 9:30, you can travel free of charge. The net result of that reduction in bus fares, the £2 fare and also the £1 fare in Taunton, is that First South, who operate buses of Somerset, reported this July that after 6 months, overall volume of their buses had gone up, passenger numbers had gone up by 16%, in Taunton by 18%, and Yeovil, who'd seen quite a lot of bus cuts anyway, by 11%. So it shows that the £2 fare can make a real difference. And one of the realities I discovered when I was doing bus stalls is that there are still a lot of people out there who are not aware of the £2 fare. It's still a message we need to get across. But we're talking about this evening the under threat bus services, the 28, the 25, the 54 and the 58A. Principally the 28 and the 25, but we're very happy to extend that to talking about the 54 and the 58, which is going to be more of the focus tomorrow night. Mike Rigby has said that we're appealing directly to the communities. I think most of you, you're unitary councillors, and I think through them, all the town councils and parish councils have heard from Mike Rigby that, yes, the extension of the £2 fare is great news, but there's simply not enough people who are currently using your buses of Somerset routes which go through your neighbourhoods. And in the current financial climate that's facing Somerset, Somerset Council will not be able to subsidise these routes indefinitely, and therefore we need people to use their buses or they're going to lose them. Very blunt warning, but given with enough time for the communities to try and do something to address that, and that's what we'll focus on in the latter part of the presentation. Somerset added further comments. While we welcome the confirmation of continued funding from the government, because government funding for Somerset with the BSIT Plus is going to continue into the next financial year, beginning April the 1st, 2024, the amount of money is going to be less. And therefore, Somerset's going to have to take some tough decisions. And it's really important that we get buses, more people to use buses. Yes, ideally, so that they become commercially viable, but just to get more people to use the buses. If the numbers go up, it strengthens the arm of Somerset Council when they're negotiating with an operator like First Bus as to just how much subsidy they really do need. As for First Bus, they've got to play a big part in making it easier for us. And as we all know, that's about reliability. We really do need to see an improvement in the reliability of First Buses of Somerset's operation in South Somerset. It's been the subject of a formal complaint by Mike Rigby to them, and we hear about it on our Facebook pages. We run our bus groups, run Facebook pages, and they're full of legitimate complaints about the unreliability of these bus services. It's an absolute imperative. I've met with James Eustace, First Bus's newly appointed director, and he is determined, as is his team, to see a significant improvement in the reliability. That's the part that they have to play, and we expect them to play it and deliver on it. Didn't start well, though. The new bus timetable, which came in on September the 3rd, First Bus didn't deliver any of those bus timetables until nearly 2 weeks after the new timetable came in, and they'd reduced their print run. There is a belief, including at Somerset Council, but also in Buses of Somerset, that the printed timetable isn't the important form of communication that I'm sure everybody on this call recognises it is, and which, if you ask any tourist information centre, what do they get asked for most? It's a printed timetable of the buses. And what do we get asked for most on our bus stalls? It's for printed timetables. They are very important, and it's essential that we get them out. As for First themselves, they're doing really well. Those who might have read Somerset Confidential this morning will have read that last year was a good year for the First Group. They made a profit of nearly £100 million, only paid £10 million in tax, and paid a good dividend to their shareholders. That was last financial year. Last week, half-year figures came out, and First Group hikes their profit outlook, and it's very much their first bus operation which drove that. And so First is in a very strong financial position. A lot of operators have found COVID a difficult time, but First has rebounded well and is doing extremely well at the moment. It is a prosperous, company, and we hope that we will see them investing in their infrastructure and in their fleet in South Somerset, because it is currently the unreliability of the buses themselves which is posing a lot of the problems. Anyway, let's get on to the under threat routes. So the 28, the Taunton to Minehead route, we've already heard comments prior to the meeting that this bus is often full, but it is threatened not with cancellation, but with major cuts if we don't increase the number of people on the buses. There is an operational problem. The bridges are low, so they can only operate single deckers. It's an ideal route for double deckers, but unfortunately they can't operate on this route. So it's all single deckers. And it does mean, particularly at peak times, I know that this bus gets full and standing, and it sometimes can't pick people up who are waiting for the bus. And though we're being told it needs to increase the numbers, it's interesting that in the mid-year review that First South gave, they said that the 28 had one of the greatest volume increases over the previous 6 months. So yes, it's doing well, but First South are saying it needs to do even better. And it needs to do even better during what is undoubtedly going to be a testing time, because the seasonality is all about the summer for that route. That's a high time for that route. With half term coming up, there's an opportunity to boost some numbers in the short term. But over the winter months, it's going to be tough to increase the numbers to the level that are required. And that level has been identified as 143 additional return trips per day. Now that's a attainable level. As I say, during the winter months, it's quite challenging, but 143 extra return trips per day ought to be attainable. That's the target that's been set by First Bus, and which has been passed on to us by Somerset Council, not as that we have to get to this number, but it's an indicator of this level of increase that we need to get. And that it's about persuading individuals and families to start to use buses more. The 25 Taunton to Dulverton route, again threatened not with cancellation, but with cuts. And there, the target is nearly 50%, sorry, a third below at 100 additional return trips. But when you look at the demographics of the journey, that is going to be quite challenging. We're talking about linking up a lot of smaller market towns, but that's a challenge for the 25. Then if we look at the Yeovil to Wincanton 58 route, that's threatened with cancellation by First South, are actually saying that they will cancel this route if we don't get the numbers up to the level at least that they and Somerset can work a deal out. And we know, as we've heard on the 28, we know on the 58 that quite often that bus can be full, probably not all the time, but it can be full. But what is the expectation there? Well, the target is 117 additional return trips. These figures were only released this afternoon. I think probably because we're having this meeting this evening, but we have been pressing Somerset Council to give us an indicator Nobody's saying that they're going to say if it gets to 115 and not make 117, it's not been a great success. What we need to do is to increase the numbers. And the fact that we've got them shown as return trips per day, it makes it a more manageable target. We are talking about persuading towns and villages, persuading relatively modest numbers of people who haven't previously taken the bus to take the bus, and to remind them it only costs £2 to go all the way from Minehead to Taunton on the bus, or from Watchet to Minehead, or from Dulverton or Wincanton to Yeovil. And finally, the Yeovil to Taunton bus, that is also threatened with cancellation. Now, frankly, I think it's almost inconceivable that the bus service that links the two major towns in Somerset will be cancelled and that there will not be a bus link. I just cannot imagine that that's happening. But First has said that unless we get the numbers up and unless Somerset can fund it, they're going to cancel this route. And the challenge is, again, quite achievable, particularly when you think of the size of both Taunton and Yeovil, with efforts by particularly Yeovil Council and Taunton Council to boost the bus numbers, as well as the quite large towns like Somerset along the bus route. We need to get the numbers up, and I know quite a lot of the unitary councillors on this route and on other routes have been starting to work with parish councils and town councils to promote the bus services. It's something that we need to do jointly and individually. And that's the purpose of this meeting. What Somerset said when they issued these figures, we can't emphasize enough that any increase in journey numbers puts us in a stronger position when we get to next spring and have to have the financial negotiations with the operator. So the important thing is to get more people onto buses. Yes, you've got targets, but the important thing is to persuade more people, more individuals, more families to start to use buses, and they've got a great price proposition there. Somerset is going to try and help. They're going to launch a social media campaign using Facebook. They're going to be targeting particularly these 4 routes with advertising, Facebook advertising, and they are also going to be producing 4 designs which will be linked to each of the routes. So you can have a copy of this poster. You will be supplied, the councils will be supplied with copies of the poster referencing your particular route. Here are the designs, less than a latte, again emphasizing the price proposition. This is one for the 54 route. Here's one for the 25, talking about the convenience of going by bus. You can actually read a book, do some work, even make a phone call, things you can't do if you're driving, or just sit back and rest. And that price proposition again. So if you've not already been in touch with Somerset Council asking for copies of these posters, each of the councils, town councils and parish councils along the route can ask for copies and they will be sent through. In the meantime, your town clerk and parish clerk have been sent versions of these which can be put on Facebook now. Or you could print them off and have hard copies. They're there. They were there mid-afternoon today, ready for the campaign to break just as soon as your councils are able to take advantage of it. What's the Somerset Bus Partnership been doing? Well, we run more bus stalls in September than any other county in the whole country, and some 10 of them along the bus routes which are under threat. Hopefully some of you came to some of our stalls. You may also have seen that we've been sticking at these £2 decals along the route, particularly on the affected routes in bus shelters. Now, not every bus stop has got a bus shelter, but where we can, we've put them up, and you'll see them all over Somerset, but particularly on the affected routes. And we're shortly going to have a flash to go over the current decal to say that it's now been extended from the £2 fare has been extended from the end of October to the end of 2024. So there's price stabilization, and it's probably the only service or any product that you can get today that will still be the same price this time next year, and it's cheaper than it was this time last year. It is a great price proposition we've got. So an action plan, I've been told by a number of Unity councillors that they've already been putting action plans together. I'm not trying to teach you how to suck eggs. I'm just got some ideas, some of which you may have already taken on board, some of which may be new, some of which you will take on board. You may have your ideas of your own, and we invite those at the end of this session. The posters that Somerset councillors put up. There are so many places you can put posters up: in schools, colleges, doctors' waiting rooms, supermarkets, tourist information centres, train stations. You can get those posters up. And here's one which was produced in Wiveliscombe and is already gone up. Here's one which was produced by a bus user group in Yeovil and is going up. And here's our stock one from Somerset Bus Partnership, talking about the £2 fare. As you noted, all of them focusing in different ways on the £2 fare. So very much a hard-nosed poster. Very happy to supply these copies of our posters to you, and also copies of the decals. Do have to say that they cost us quite a lot of money. We spent over £1,200 on producing printed timetables for our bus stalls. The decals, we spent the best part of £1,000. We're about to print new ones, talking about going on to the end of 2024. If your parish councils could see their way fit to making a donation to the Somerset Bus Partnership, I can assure you your money would be spent very effectively. Something for you to think about. But the message I was mentioning earlier, the printed information is still king. Older people are a very important source of incremental business for buses, a very important source of existing business for buses. Older people do find the mobile phone not the easiest way of getting information about buses. And also it tends to be specific to that one next journey. And people of all ages, we get a lot of families coming to our stalls and saying, we'd like to have a printed bus timetable so we can plan what we're going to do. And it's so much easier to do it if I've got it in a written form, in a printed form, than having to look on the internet. For buses, printed information is still king. Important though online is. It's well worth you going to have a look at your local bus stops. Somerset Council will replace timetable cases and upgrade timetable cases if you or your parish clerk, town clerk, reports any which are defective or damaged or even missing. Let's try and move that on. There we are. Here's an example of, yes, a bus timetable up, but it's faded and it's also under a discolored plastic cover, which makes it literally impossible to read the information, let alone, sadly, in many cases, the bus timetable information is in such tiny print that it's impossible to read. The ideal information at a bus stop is that it's customized for that bus stop. Now, First Bus in other parts of the county and elsewhere does produce customized bus stop information, and ideally that's something that they might be prepared to do down in the south. But in the meantime, what we do know is that Somerset Council will respond if there is a report of a damaged or broken timetable case. It's their responsibility to replace it. So do check, and it's good if you could have checked all the bus timetable cases in your area, because if they're sending somebody out to address them, what they don't want to do is be told 10 days later, oh, we have another one. But much more efficient use of limited people resource that they've got to do this task if we could ideally do it a longer route. So whether it's the Delverton to Wiveliscombe and on to Taunton route, or whether it's the Minehead to Watchet, or Watchet on to Taunton part of the route, be good if somebody could try and orchestrate a review of the timetable cases and then let Somerset know about them. It's a pity that when there is a large timetable case, the bus information doesn't take advantage of the space that it's got. Some town councils and parish councils do choose to stick their own timetables up on the bus timetable case. That's a decision for you to make. If you think it would be easier for people to read if you did that, then that's your decision to take. It's the gauntlet's been thrown down to individual parish and town councils to do something to boost patronage of these buses. And if you think it's better to put a timetable up which is easier for your local people to read, then that makes sense to me. Printed local timetables. Yes, First Bus is printing timetable booklets. They have probably 20, 30 bus routes in those timetable booklets. But actually, if you're in Watchet, you might not be that interested in most of those other bus routes. You really want to know what time your bus is coming through your town. And what we did in our village, and this is now being picked up by quite a lot of villages and even by some of the towns in the north of Somerset, is we produce a timetable for our specific village. In our particular case, we've got 2 different bus routes coming through our village, and it costs us for around about 1,000 copies, £150, £170, which for a parish council is quite an affordable amount of money. Somebody has to put it together, I know, but there's generally somebody in the village with the IT skills to be able to put a simple timetable together. But as you can see, it's much easier to read because it's saying what time does the bus go from our village high street and what time does it come back from the nearest town or towns that our bus services go to. And how does it get delivered? Because there's no point just printing these things and having them in a storeroom. You need to get them out. they get delivered to every house in our village. And who does it? The parish councillors go around and do it, and they get an enormous amount of thanks for it. I'm one of those parish councillors, and it really does surprise me just how grateful people are of all ages to actually have a printed, easy to use bus timetable. So I would urge parish councils and town councils to think about producing a local bus timetable. I know it was a pledge during the elections at Taunton Town Council that they would introduce a local town bus timetable booklet for Taunton. Also, if you're particularly printing your own timetable, get those timetable leaflets into local shops, local pubs, B&Bs, hotels, caravan parks. Think particularly the stretch between Watchet and Minehead, enormous opportunity to try and capture some holiday business on that bus route. But people won't think of using the bus unless there is plenty of information there, whether it's up on notice boards or whether there are lots of copies of that local bus timetable. That's what's needed. Also, let's go back to that. Also in schools, colleges, doctors' waiting rooms, local shops, tourist information centres, train stations, even giving them to local businesses. We need to get into people's hands the local timetable if you possibly can. And are your bus timetables on your parish and town council websites? A good place to have them quite easily put up. And any local events, particularly if it's being run by the local council, it's great to include how to get there by bus. The start times and the finish times of events, you could show the local bus times to get people there to the events and from the events. But as we saw with campaigns for any sort of issue, it's about raising the profile. And buses now are much higher profile than they've ever been before. But it's good if we could try and raise their profile locally. And that's by using the local media and maybe featuring a local celebrity. And some of those local celebrities are your unitary councillors or your town council chair, your mayor. These are all people who could be seen riding buses, talking about buses, encouraging people to use buses, because it's important. It's not just for themselves that people need to be using buses. It's important for your communities. There are many people in your communities who will be solely dependent on buses. They won't have the option of going by car. And that point needs to be made, that there is a social responsibility to try and keep bus services serving your communities. And sometimes somebody who usually goes by bus could go out of their way, and who usually goes by car could go out of their way and go by bus instead. So use your local newspapers, free sheets, whatever. Parish magazines, still read by a lot of people, by a lot of bus users, in fact. Towns and parishes have websites. It's important that buses have a feature, have a section on the website. Unitary councillors in particular, but also some town councillors and chairs of local parish councils send out newsletters, try and get them to put something in there about buses. And local radio, BBC Radio Somerset, I've been on there quite a lot of times, as have some of our other bus activists. They're very, very interested in buses as an issue. They know it's an important issue for a lot of their listeners. BBC Radio Somerset, if you give them a story, they will want to run it. They are very aware of the threat to these 4 bus routes and are willing to do stories about it if you can give them a human interest story. And bus stalls, the Somerset Bus Partnership is very adept at doing bus stalls. We've done a lot last month, but if you decide it would help either at an event that you're running or to have one in your marketplace, to have a bus stall, let us know and we'll come along armed with all the literature and the information and the stands and the displays, and very willing to support you in every way. And then social media. What a wonderful opportunity that is, as long as it's Facebook, because Facebook is the thing which has the real reach in communities. I imagine most of the communities in the villages and the towns you live in all have pretty powerful Facebook pages. It is a great opportunity, to promote buses, but also if there are problems with buses, to put information up so that people are warned about the problems, or if there are roadworks, to warn people about the impact that will have on the buses, if there are diversions. Facebook is such an information source, and it can have an enormous reach. I mean, this is one post we put up on our Somerset Bus Partnership when the £2 fare was extended to the end of 2024, and it was seen by 40,000 people, which is an enormous reach. It was shared 108 times, which is why, I mean, you put it up on your local village or town Facebook page, but if it's got a relevance to other groups, people will share it. And this one obviously had enormous relevance. And so there we were, didn't cost us a penny. It took 20 minutes perhaps to design it and put it up there. And we reached 40,000 people. Shows the power of Facebook, and it's the power in your hands. So one final off-the-wall comment. First Bus has made it quite clear that they want us to do a lot, and I imagine the communities on this call this evening are planning to do a lot to keep their bus services, because those communities know just how important those bus services are to them. First Group is one of the major corporations in our nation, and they have a sense of community social responsibility. And so I suggest that you write a letter to the chairman of First Group, David Martin. If you write First Group Aberdeen, it's going to reach him. And you tell David just how important your bus service, your buses of Somerset, First Bus service is to your community, and what you're doing as a community to help boost the numbers of people on their bus service. That you're doing the job that actually they should be doing, which is promoting their buses for them. You are promoting their bus service. No other service that you are buying, you're having to promote, but with buses, you're being asked to promote their buses, and that's going to help the bottom line of First Bus. But I think the argument is with him is to make him aware of just how important it is this bus is to your community, and how hard and what you're doing to keep that bus service. And it will have an impact. It will ricochet amongst the corridors of power in First Bus. So it's an unusual thing to do, something we did in my village when First Bus threatened to withdraw bus services from my village. I'm glad to say we've got those bus services today, and more of them than we've ever had before. So it can be done. So enough from me, far too much from me. Would anybody else, I'm sure somebody would like to speak. It's over to you. If you put your hand up, and you will have to unmute yourselves. If you are Bryce.
I would say ladies first, so Loretta, if you would like to
Sorry.
go first.
Loretta.
Okay, thank you, Bryce. I was just going to say thank you for a very, very interesting presentation. Having manned the bus stall in Watchet when we had it at our street fair a couple of weeks ago, there's a lot of interest, and you've probably seen all the social media comments about why do we have it if they're going to cut the buses. You know, some people are thinking the bus is going to be cancelled. I don't think it's a cancellation of the route, it's a cancellation of some part of the timetable, and I think that's what people are more concerned about. You know, sometimes you can't get on the 28 bus. I have tried to use it over the last couple of weeks because I've not been well, but prior to that, and you can't use it on a Monday or a Friday because of butlins. So, you know, and unless you want to be squashed in like a sardine. So I don't particularly want to do that. But I like the idea of writing to David Martin. I think that would be a good idea for all parish councils to do that. But the other thing is, could we have a copy of the presentation, please, sent to the councils? That would be good, so that other councillors who cannot be on the call get the opportunity to see what it was all about. I will be doing a small report for Watchet and Willerton parish councils. But thank you very much, Peter. It's been very, very interesting.
Loretta, thank you. And thank you for running the bus stall in Watchet as well. Yes, we'll send to everyone who's puts their email addresses, we'll send them a copy of the presentation, and we'll also put it on YouTube. So if you want to sit through it again, you'll have the ability to, but we'll also send copies, obviously, to all the parish clerks and town clerks. Bryce, can I go to you now?
Yeah, evening, Peter. Thanks very much for going through what you've gone through there. I agree with everything that you've said and the actions that you're undertaking to promote the services, but I do have major reservations, which I would like to explain on behalf of residents of Dulverton. The major reservation that I've got, and you're talking about all this promotion, which I think is laudable. I think it's a great idea to increase passenger numbers, but I've got a really salient question to ask, and that is, would you give a job reference to somebody that's unreliable? And that's the point that I want to make. People will not use the service if the service is unreliable. From what I can see, it's an ever downward spiral, and the residents of Dulverton or beyond with Liscombe can see that the service has deteriorated massively. My family's been impacted, and so have other students in the Dulverton area trying to get to the various colleges in Taunton. My wife, in the last 3 weeks, has done more than 6 120-mile round trips to pick our son up at Dulverton after the bus hasn't turned up, to go and pick him back up from Dulverton, to take him into Taunton to return home. 6 times. Other students have similarly been failed. Arwen's on the call. Her son has a health issue. He returned home, having caught the 10 to 7 bus in the morning last week, and he got home at 9:15 at night because the bus was severely delayed on the return journey. It's totally unacceptable. I agree with what you've said in terms of all of the promotional activities, but the promotional activities will only work if the service is reliable. We've been given cock and bull stories in relation to bus unavailability, lack of drivers. We've even had a driver stranded in Dulverton recently when the roads had been closed because the first bus didn't tell the driver that the road was going to be closed between Dulverton back to Taunton. We've had a driver press ganged into providing the service, which Arwen's son caught last week, that missed his tea. So a passenger on the bus got him fish and chips from the chip shop because he's working beyond what he should have been working. The service is abominable.
I wish I could say you're totally wrong, but I think we all know that there is a very serious problem about reliability.
Yeah.
Somerset Council has taken it up the highest levels, continues to do so. Our bus groups in Taunton and in Yeovil, and we've got a new one has been set up in Burnham and Highbridge. They've all raised the same issues. It is a real problem. First, from their point of view, has recognized it. It's one thing to recognize it, it's the second thing to do something about it. I'm being told from people who have talked to first at the highest level that a real determined effort has been put in to getting more drivers into the area. The problem with driver supply is nothing like it was. They are having reliability problems at the moment. But Bryce, I mean, I make no secret of the fact there is a reliability problem. I've mentioned it a few times through this presentation. The tough fact of life is we don't have an alternative at the moment, and so we have to make the best of what we've got. But I recognise everything that you said.
But if I can just explain, Peter, my son elected to go to Richard Hewish College, and there are other students in Taunton that don't have a minibus. Now, when my son elects to get the service bus, he cannot be guaranteed to get there. Other students attending other colleges in Taunton cannot be guaranteed to get there. And there's been numerous occasions whereby the bus hasn't turned up. We know there's been major roadworks, which has been dropped into chat, but it goes beyond that. We know that the information on the app and Twitter feeds are inconsistent and incorrect, and I've made the first bus aware of that, so is Arwen and other parents. None of it can be relied upon, and the excuses that you're given are absolutely atrocious. Now, the one thing that I would like to ask, and I know there's a promotional activity to try and increase passenger numbers on the Dulverton 25 route, when, say, I believe it's going to be within the next month, but you're targeting passengers probably at the least time of year that you're going to get patronage. Patronage has already dropped off because of service unreliability. It's going to take more than 6 months to turn that around. Me being really cynical, can see that even if the bus company provide an enhanced service and the passenger numbers don't increase, they'll cut the numbers because they'll say it's unviable. If the numbers do increase, there may be viability there, but that bus is supported by BSIP, which is additional funding. And I've contacted John Perrott within Somerset Council. I've also contacted Little Granger, my 2 local councillors, and I have emailed First Bus on a number of occasions to say, what are you doing to sort this out? Because I can see that if the numbers do not increase by the start of the financial year, it will be unviable, it'll be uneconomical, and what they'll do is they'll cut the number of buses on that route. Now, I can see that as a downward spiral, irrespective of what you're trying to do. You're trying to promote numbers to something that's unreliable. People will not switch in 6 months, but we'll come into the new financial year, and that's when the decision will be made. Correct us if I'm wrong.
Well, I hear what you say, Bryce. I don't think we have any alternative but to keep on promoting these bus services, and people will have to make their own decision as to how they fit in with their lives, how they cope with it. They shouldn't have to. Those bus services ought to be reliable. And as I say, it is being addressed at the very highest level.
Yeah.
by Somerset, and we can do no more than that.
Peter,
I've just got one question to ask, and I have asked John Perrott for this, and I'm aware that I'm taking up time from other people, so we'll be quiet after this. The one question I would like to ask is, I would love to see stats for the routes that are under threat, to see how many terminations, how many cancelled services, or how many services have not actually started for those routes in comparison to the profitable routes within the area. Because if First Bus has got a route that's profitable, they're hardly likely to take a driver off and put it on an uneconomical route, irrespective of what the terms and conditions of the contract are, because they're cutting the nose off to spite the face. But I would love for somebody to give me those figures, because that's what really needs to be checked.
Okay, Bryce, I will raise that, as you obviously have with John Perrott already. I will raise that. I will raise it. There is a bus advisory board meeting tomorrow. I will raise it there, saying we do need to analyze that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for allowing us to speak. I'll be quiet now.
Bryce.
Thanks.
Brenda, I think you were next in line.
Thank you. I'm on, my parish is on the 28 bus route. Apart from the complaints about missed buses or not turning up, one of the concerns I have is it talks about the fact that this bus route is one of the most used, and yet it's subject to possible cuts. Are there certain times of the day when there are not enough people on the buses? Because just to say we need another 143 extra return trips a day, when some of the trips are fully booked and standing room only, well, which ones are the ones that are not economic? I mean, we need to know that. So I think we need more information about what is and what isn't viable.
Right. I totally agree with you on that point. It's there is such a lot of feedback about how the 28, particularly on change days at Butlins, gets full up and can't pick everyone up. It presumably is at other times during the week, but I think the problem of overcrowding on the 28 has to be addressed at the same time as addressing the increase in patronage on the 28. David Northey.
Thanks, Peter. So it's responding to Brenda, who I know very well, and to Bryce. Really, I think the key message, a little bit from what you said earlier, Peter, is it's got to be some direct communication with First in Aberdeen. They need to know what is happening to residents in Somerset, and I think it all becomes a bit invisible. So that's definitely one action, and with a colleague who's in Watch It is going to do that. I can't underestimate the power of doing that, because that's the last thing boards want, are letters from commuters, users, parish councils saying about the state of their bus service. So that's really important. Now, what they're doing in Somerset, and you look at the Dulverton route with 6-7 buses a day, you take one bus out, that's a significant reduction in bus services, with a service every 2 hours or every 3 hours from Dulverton. And the impact on children going to school in Taunton, once that bus is missed, there's no other alternative. So we've had some feedback from John Perrott to say that about 1% of buses are cancelled in Somerset. Well, that's probably on an average across the whole bus network. But actually the effect in Dulverton or Dunster or wherever is quite significant when you start to take 1 or 2 buses out. So us knowing the detail of what percentage of buses have cancelled, I think is really important. And that's probably something that we should take up with them tomorrow, Peter, on that. It's a bit like if we go back 50 years and sort of the railways and closure by stealth of sort of, well, let's make it really awkward for everybody to travel. And therefore, this is a sort of a double-edged sword. So we've got routes that are under threat because the buses of Somerset have had problems with drivers. And so it just keeps spiraling out of control. And yes, the right thing to do is to do the promotion. But going back to what Bryce said, actually, when you've got an unreliable route, it's really difficult. And we started this on the North Devon line, trying to promote it when it was really bad, and actually it caused a sort of a real big problem. So it's a dichotomy, really. What do? Do you sit back and not do anything, or do you try to do something? But I think we've also got to try to fight this whole unreliability, because it's the unreliability that drives people from making any decisions to use the bus network. So as part of this, we've got to keep the pressure up, for me, on First. They provide that bus service. They do it with some money from BSIP, and they are affecting people's lives. If we don't do it, then the bus services will be cut further, because First, I feel, ineptitude really of running a bus service. That's my my view.
Thank you, David.
Peter.
Thank you very much. Sarah, it's very useful as well. Sarah from Langport.
Yes, so obviously from Langport, so my interest is in the 54, which I've used a lot recently, and the Bryce and Brenda have kind of, and then David answering those questions, have kind of said what I wanted to say, really, which is about more stats and feeding back to David Martin the bad news as well as the good news, so about the reliability. But what I mean, I put this in the chat, I'm a very trusting person normally, but I'm just wondering, can we trust the stats that the bus companies give us about cancellations? And can we trust the numbers that they're giving us about people who use the routes? Because I'm just not 100% that everybody taps their card, that the money, I'm just not 100% convinced about some of the stats and, you know, how honest they are, if honest is the right word to use, I'm not sure. But also, finally, I don't know that you've got an answer, Peter, so don't worry about this. I just wanted to say it so you don't have to answer it. But I think Rosa's coming on in a minute. She's looked so she wanted to say something, but I saw she put something in the chat about the carbon footprint, and that would be a really useful thing for us to collectively get stats on, so that we could feed that back to whoever, powers that be, whoever they might be, God knows. But anyway, so I just wanted to say that. Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. It's been very interesting.
Thanks, Sarah. Edward Furman, where are you from, Edward?
Thank you. I don't know if Rosa was in front of me. I don't know if she wants to go first.
She can look after herself, believe me. I've worked a lot with Rosa. We'll go to Rosa next. Thanks.
All right. I'm Edward Furman. I live in Norton Fitzwarren, but I'm a Taunton Town Councillor representing Staplegrove. When they had all this, the price cap and the promotion previously in the village, we did organise some trips out to watch it, and Minehead to do a bit of a pub crawl. So we took advantage of it that way, and the 28 bus that goes through Staplegrove, there was a lot of concern when they first did the increases in frequency, but that it did then improve. So we have seen improvements. And I think residents have been grateful, but at the same time, there has been a lot of instances of unreliability. It always comes back to that point of, catching a bus is a bit of a time investment. If you can't rely on it, you're probably just going to take a car or get a taxi. So I think that is the main point, is that First do seem to be making improvements, but it is, as the Bryce said, it's difficult to promote something when people don't really have a lot of faith in it in the first place. And I feel that that's where people are, is that they feel that it's too much of a hassle to even try thinking about taking the bus. when there are other more reliable methods.
Yeah, I think the challenge we have is finding a way of still promoting it whilst at the same time pressurizing First Bus, and whether it's writing to the chair, whether it's writing to the management of First South, keeping.
Oh, sorry, I will also add, as town council, whenever we have a stall, we do also tend to have a little poster at the back, saying about the £1 bus fare around Taunton. So we do try and promote it, but it's just, it can be difficult.
I know that Taunton Town Council is a strong supporter of buses. Thank you. Rosa, I give in, and I'm inviting you to please to speak to us, Rosa. You're on mute at the moment.
I apologise to everyone. I'm actually out of your area. However, I am interested in what buses and what First is doing to Somerset very much. I have heard everyone's concerns about how can we promote services when they appear unreliable. And of course, one bad journey, one person let down, and the rumour mill and the Chinese whisper make it much worse. We, however, and I mean all of us in Somerset, have to encourage and promote the buses. And when we are let down by First, we must use that wonderful thing called a bus charter and hit them with the costs. Write those letters in, get everyone to write letters in to the top people and tell them how much it has physically cost you, not only in emotional, physical well-being, but in physical costs. Tell them that that is their responsibility. They are contracted to provide a service. They should provide it. However, you have still got to publicise. Sorry, folks, we got to do it. That's it. I'm out.
Thanks, Rosa. Many of you will know Rosa because though she's running the Wells Bus User Group, during September she went all over Somerset, getting involved in our bus stalls. So thank you very much, Rosa. Going on to Nick Thwaites.
Oh.
Where are you from? Which?
Yes, good evening. I'm the Deputy Chairman of Somerset Town Council. I also represent the National Park. I was a District Councillor for Somerset West Somerset. I think it's interesting. I've been on some conference calls which have involved people from Bristol, Birmingham, and places like that. And one of the aspects of it is that they feel that a general aspect is that they should make the use of cars so expensive that you actually come away from using cars and you go on to bus services. It was a little bit of a shock to them when I said that we have the problem is that if we don't have the cars, we don't really have a bus service which we can get onto to start with. And it was recognised, interestingly enough, that Taunton, as far as they were concerned, was a rural community. And when I told them that rural community is when places like Watchet, Taunton and places like that, they were a bit surprised about it. But the outcome actually is that to run a commercial or run a service, it is not going to be commercially viable for a period of time until such time as it becomes used. And it becomes a commercial. So basically it's down to money at the end of the day. Now, there is money generated through the Somerset Council, through its transport policies of car parks. There is a lot of money, effectively, I won't call it a surplus, but over and above the operation and maintenance cost of running the car parks. In fact, when I was at Somerset West and Taunton, surplus was running in the period of about £4 million. When it was West Somerset, it was about £489,000. That was over and above the operation and maintenance of the car parks. That money under the 1984 Transport Act allows it to be used for transport purposes. And one of the things I don't see here is that money being used for transport purposes. So I think the interesting thing is you talk about in your presentation that we should encourage more people to use the buses. But of course, you have to have spaces for people to get on the buses to prove them on. And from Dulverton, when they start off, they're empty. By the time they get to Witherscombe, they're completely full and you can't get any more people on there. So it's very difficult to increase the number of people using transport if there's no space for them to get on. And I think that's where it comes down to. You have to accept that to start with, the service is not going to be commercially viable and it's going to be a loss leader, and you have to support that service and move forward from there. But as we said, reliability is no use throwing people and telling them they must come away from their cars and use public transport, because certainly in this environment here, you would need a car to get from your property to actually a bus stop to start with. So it's counterproductive. You just cannot do this business about pushing people away from cars and saying they must use public transport until such time as that transport is reliable, it is there, and there is space there, and it is financially viable for people to use it. I'll shut up now. Thank you very much for the time.
Okay, I guess at the end of the day, it's people individually will have to make the decisions as to, well, firstly, whether they have any options. And there is a significant cohort who do not have any options but to go by bus. And as I said earlier, it's important that we are aware of their need for that bus service, because if this bus service is cut further in the case of the one from Dulverton, or were to disappear altogether, as perhaps the Wincanton to Yeovil bus service is under that sort of threat, those people would be in a very difficult position. And so there is a need for us to recognise that by going by bus, it's not only saving us perhaps money, but we are doing a social service. And yes, yet again, we hear the issue of reliability and overcrowding. The overcrowding issue is one for First Bus to address, and it's come up both on the 25 and the 28 routes, and I will raise it at the meeting that David and Tony are at tomorrow, which First will be at, and hear what they've got to say. The feedback is useful, but ultimately what we have to do is get more passengers on those buses, otherwise we won't have a bus service to talk about. Angelina, you've been very patient. Over to you. You're on mute at the moment, Angelina.
Okay, sorry.
There we are. Yep.
Thank you. I'm a nurse and I don't currently drive due to health and financial reasons. So I use the buses to get to work. I've got the early morning bus, and through the pandemic, I got on the buses and they ran really well. It was a really difficult time, but I did it. I am absolutely shocked that after the pandemic that we have got more people on the buses, because I get the 6:27 a.m. from Watchet to Taunton, and those buses get packed. By the time it's got to Bishop's Lydeard, there's hardly a seat for some people. Some people are standing, and these are people that they're working. Not everyone drives, not everyone can drive. So why on earth have they got the audacity to say they're going to cut these services? Because when I've come home from my shift, sometimes after a 10-hour shift, sometimes I've had to sort of sit on a step or stand up because the college kids use the bus. Sometimes it's Butlins changeover day, members of the public, other people, also patients going into the hospital for certain treatments because they can't drive, don't have money for taxis, or cannot access hospital transport because there are strict criteria. So I do not understand how they can even have the audacity to cut the 28 in any way, shape or form. I get how we have to promote the buses. I get that aspect, but I think we need more buses as opposed to less. I just think it's going to cause more problems in the long run. And furthermore, why can't they reopen the train line, which is a different topic, but it would help with the environment, from Taunton to Minehead as well? That train line apparently is really well working, etc., from what I've heard. So there's things like that. I just find it absolutely disgusting that they're even proposing cutting the 28 when, you know, sometimes you can't even get a seat, and it's actually dangerously full to the extent where some people can't even get on the bus. So that's my little thing.
Well, quite a number of my colleagues in the Somerset Bus Partnership were disbelieving when they said that the Minehead to Taunton route was going to be in danger of being cut back, because it's been known it's been a profitable route for many years, and the usage, as you quite rightly say, has gone up, and First acknowledged that it had gone up markedly this year. So it's a puzzling conclusion for First to have come to. Karen.
I'm probably going to actually just confirm what Angelina said. I live in Minehead. I'm actually a tutor at Bridgewater and Taunton College. And in order to try and get there to work on time, like Angelina, I have to catch a sort of 6 o'clock bus to get to work for 8:30. And that applies to a lot of our students as well. My thought has always been, why don't they talk about increasing numbers, going back to Angelina's point as well, why don't they have a commuter service that has more of a direct run into Taunton, but not just into Taunton bus station, but up to the hospital and also to the college, who are big employers. I know of people who have actually had to stop working in Taunton because they rely on the bus. And one chap was telling us he didn't get back till 10 o'clock one night because there's something that, you know, he had to hang around. And the other thing I don't understand either is we tend to be more of a retirement population, you know, down in the Minehead area and surrounding areas, and people need to get to the hospital. But again, you've got to go into town and come out of town again. Why is the bus route not fit for purpose for the population it serves?
Thank you. I hear very clearly what you're saying. And what we are hearing is a lot of complaints about the bus service. Not hearing very much about promoting the bus service. Helen Chadwick.
Hi, thank you very much. Apologies, I can't put my video on because I struggle enough with bandwidth as it is. But my point is that I am clerk for 2 villages, Hatch Beecham and Langford Budville, neither of which have a regular bus service. These services that are under discussion today, some of those go either through the parishes I represent or very, very close. It would seem to me that, you know, I represent 2 villages that are crying out and have data support the need for a bus service and don't have one. If we're looking for additional bums on seats, then would it be possible for any of these services, not everyone, but even a couple of times a day would be amazing, to divert through the village and pick up this unserved need?
It's something we can raise. Have you raised that at all with First Bus as an option?
Yes.
Yeah.
They did. There was bus services through both villages, but they were cancelled probably 7 or 8 years ago now.
Right.
Hence why we've put a lot of work in. Even the parish council has funded in Hatch Beecham a trial bus service to show that there is a demand. And we're hoping to use that to make a case, if you like, for the 54 for Hatch Beecham to come through the village and pick up, and that would be an incredible thing.
I'm sure you are talking to your unitary councillor about that as well.
Absolutely, they've gone on board the whole way. It's Ross Henley and Sarah Wakefield for Hatch Beecham, Dave Mansell and Gwyl Wren for Langford Budville. I believe that, I don't know which of the services comes through Milverton, I think it might be, I don't know whether it's 28 or 25, but you would tell me that actually it goes half a mile from Langford Budville.
Right.
The 22A also comes into Langford Budville parish at Tonedale, but doesn't go to Langford Budville. Again, that's less than a mile.
Okay.
And it's just a shame, particularly, you know, with the economic climate. There's a whole swathe of people out there that don't have access to any bus services, and with a little bit of joined up thinking, it seems to me there's an opportunity there. Anyway, that's my £2. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Worth a few pounds, that is. Thank you. Arwen Lewis.
Hello, Peter. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
That's grand. So what I'm hearing from you is this lovely, very clear message that we've got two tactics. One, to pressure the first bus company, and two, to promote the buses. So I would say that in interest of pressuring the bus company, we really need more buses during peak times. So for example, my son, who goes to Bridgewater and Taunton College, he finishes at 4:30. He has to wait until 5:40 to catch a bus home because there just isn't one, you know, and it's a long time to sort of wait around. So more buses in peak times. And the other thing is, you know, when I'm a music teacher, when I run a community ensemble, I get lots of people in the beginner groups and not many people in the advanced groups. And you need an advanced group. And my beginner groups subsidize my advanced groups so that there can be one. So why on earth isn't, you know, we need to pressure First Bus with the idea that they should be using their very lucrative routes to subsidize the more rural routes, because that's the right thing to do. And in the interest of promotion, I'd be very, very happy to help promote in any way that I can. Again, drawing on my own experience as a music teacher, I've taken on a number of schools where the instrument I teach has become really run down because the last teacher just sort of faded away, and the pandemic and everything. And it generally takes, with the support of a good head of music, 18 months to get it back on track, and without support, 4 years to get numbers back up. So what we need is all the support and all the promotion as fast and as much as possible. And the leaflets, I think, because, you know, when I first moved here, I had no idea, you know, there was a bus stop near my house, but I had no idea which direction the bus was going from it and where, and it was all very difficult to get information. So the leaflet's very, very good idea. But I don't think I've had one through my front door in Dulverton. So pressure and promote, I like it. It's good. Thank you.
And thank you very much. It's very constructive comments, which I think I'll probably get from Martin Strauss, I hope. Martin Strauss from Taunton.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Martin Strauss. I'm Deputy Leader of Taunton Town Council. I'm Chair of Community Services. I've been chairing the working group on public transport. And also for the last 2 years, I was heavily involved in Somerset Bus Partnership, along with David Northey and John Hassel. I've been working very closely with Ed Firmin since the Taunton Town Council was started. Now, I would say that the biggest single problem that we have in terms of what people come up with on the street is reliability. It's been said before, but I'll say it again, reliability. And that's down to two things. Number one, it's been the excuse, well, we haven't got any reserve bus drivers, so if somebody's off sick, the bus is cancelled. And also we've been getting all the hand-me-down buses from various parts of the country. So the buses break down. And both of these are really important. The other thing I would say is it's not a joined up system. I live 4 minutes by car from Taunton Station. I live right next to the bus garage. But it takes me anything up to an hour or more because I have to, if I go by bus, because I have to go into town and change buses. And what we badly need in Taunton, and we used to have it years ago, is a really good shuttle bus service that connects up the key points in the town, the railway station, the hospital, the town centre, and other key points. And that's what's missing. And it really does need addressing, because just having cheap fares, as has been said earlier, is no good if people say, well, I can't rely on the bus service. So I think the reliability factor is by far the most important one. It's even more important than the cheap fares, which I agree are important. So I'd just like to emphasise that. I'm still working very hard in different ways to ensure that the services are improved in Taunton. We as a town council are determined to do that. But as I say, we've got some fundamental problems that really do need addressing and addressing quickly. Thank you.
And a timetable for Taunton, is that on the shopping list somewhere?
The problem we have in Taunton, this is a big one, is lack of money. We have very little resource available. The council was only set up in May. I'm sure Ed will bear me out. We are heavily underfunded in so many areas, and that is actually holding us back. But what I would like to see, I'd love to see a local timetable for Taunton, but we have to find the money to do it, and that's a difficult one at the moment. But that's certainly on the list of things that we want to do. And also the other thing that was mentioned earlier, things like inaccurate timetable at bus stops. That is something that I am addressing. I would like all ward councillors to take responsibility in their own wards just to check the bus stops and just to have the information of what's available. So all of that we are working towards. But as I say, the council's new. I mean, we've only been in office a few months. We've got a long way to go yet, but it is being addressed.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks very much, and for all that you're doing as well. Jose.
Hi, good evening all. My point is regarding the 28 bus route, and I agree quite a lot with what Sarah from Longport said and Angelica from Watch It. My problem is the 28 bus route, which is a very important route. There's a lot of people on the area which are older people. There's now, because of new housing states, there is a lot of students now using that route as well, but they're too overcrowded, all these buses. Like Angelica was saying, if you get the morning bus, you get old people who have to get on there, and they have to stand up on the journey from Wellington, Bishop's Lydiard onwards, all the way to Taunton. I recently did a monitoring survey from the 19th of September to the 30th of September, where I did 14 journeys into Taunton and 14 journeys into Minehead. I managed to, on the majority of them, the average, because people tell you you've got to use the buses and all that sort of thing, I managed to check most of the buses, and I've got all the details on there, and on average, the buses were half full. That would constitute a bus capacity of 15 seats per journey. If the Taunton to Minehead bus service, which first bus use, or say, needs to have 143 passengers a day, if you take the figures that I've taken, which, like people have said, first bus are not giving correct figures, from the figures that I've taken, if you could think of 15 passengers per journey, and this is different types of the data, I haven't done them all at the same time. They've been done in the morning, they've been done in the afternoon, halfway through the day, at different times. 15 passengers a day, and if they do 20 journeys each way, you're talking about 300 people, which is double the capacity that they say they need, which is 143. Then you've got all the different other things, like, say, for example, people getting into work in the morning to go to, as Angelina was saying, about for hospital appointments and for things like that. I, for example, on Wednesday, have got an 8:30 appointment at Musgrove Hospital, because I've recently had an operation, major operation. And to get there in time, I've got to get a taxi, because the 5 to 8 bus that I should be able to get there in time normally does not arrive till about 10 past, quarter past. I've been told that by people who use that service regularly. So I've got to get a taxi to get there. The other day I went to Williton to visit my niece. She lives in Shotgate Meadow, which is where Williton Hospital is. There's a bus stop just outside there. On the way back, I went to wait for the bus there. The bus was coming along. I put my hand out and it wasn't stopping, so I had to step out onto the road in front of the bus for him to stop. And he told me that was not a stop that he was shown to be. I had to show him on the app that was a stop, the driver, because he said that the bus stop was the next one along, which was past the pub in North Street.
Thanks.
Right.
Thanks, Jose.
So
one of the problems is that
no, but the reason why I'm saying that is that because
you said a lot. Thank you, Jose.
No, other people have spoken more than me, and I've been waiting for a while to say this. And what I'm saying is that even the drivers obviously are not being taught the route correctly.
Well, a lot of them are trainee drivers or new drivers, or they're being brought in from elsewhere.
A bus stop is a bus stop, and it should be abided by all drivers.
Yeah, they should be. You're quite right. Tony.
Thank you, Jose, for that, because it leads into what I wanted to say. First of all, I know Peter will say it, but thank you all, both those who've already had to leave and those who are still here. It is you who can help drive things forwards. We're talking tonight mainly about what we do about getting more people on buses, but we've also talked quite a lot about other things, and they will not be forgotten. We will be looking after them. And Jose, I want to say to you, if you have just done a survey and can write it up, that is something we would like to see. We are asking people to carry out their own surveys. We're asking people to let us know when buses are cancelled, because although it's on First Bus Twitter group and it's sometimes on Facebook, we don't have all the information. Like everybody else here, I don't think we trust the figures we're getting from First. There's a lot of things First are not doing where we're having to do their work for them. And I would suggest every time you hear of a cancellation or you know of one, we would like an email to Somerset Bus Partnership, because we will be collecting our own information, because we want to talk to First and we want to talk about the traffic commissioner who is responsible for public services and commercial services in Somerset. We can pick the information we get from First, but we can actually back it up with some of our own information. That's even better. So as well as all the things that Peter's asked you to do, and I know it was a massive list, anything you can do to help us about known problems with individual drivers who won't recognize bus stops, that's also something we are interested in. But problems with the services, the more information we have, and I apologize to our own administration, who we know this will increase their workload, but we need this information. There are 200 of you around Somerset now who have joined us as part of Somerset Bus Partnership, and we need that information. We need all the information we can get. I've heard a lot of things tonight, most of which I have heard before, but some of them are new, and some of them, we need to have, because when we do get into a meeting with Somerset Council or with First Bus, or, as I say, with the Traffic Commissioner, we need enough background information to say, here are the problems. Tonight's meeting was primarily about one subject, publicising these 4 routes, or the 2 routes to the west of Taunton and the 2 routes which we're going to go through again tomorrow night, and just seeing what it is we can do. You can complain that this is First's job, you can complain that First are not doing their side of the job, but we as a group can make a difference. And I know it's difficult to persuade somebody. How do you jump on a bus when I don't know if I'll get back? That's a comment you'll get, and we have to work through it to say, at the moment, we are being told these 4 routes are under threat. We have the announcements about 2025 and 2026 bus partnership money. There may be money there, but we need to be showing that we are working towards those targets. We won't necessarily reach them, but since we now have a target figure, we can see how we're doing against that, and we can talk about it and persuade others. And that's really what tonight's about. However difficult it seems, keep trying to persuade other people, as Peter said, for environmental reasons, for the support of those who have no other way of getting around. We need to increase the usage on each of these routes.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much indeed. Lee Child.
Hi, Peter. Good evening,
Dee.
everyone. Dee from Norton Fitzwarren Parish Council. And we've tried for quite a while now, with the help of Councillor Rigby, to get our 25 service. We've got the evening buses that, as Edward was saying, we've had some particularly enjoyable evenings out to the various pubs and hostelries around the 28 route, sorry. And we've been trying for quite a while now. An aspiration is to have the Sunday service running, which again would put more bums on seats. And whether we'll get that in the current climate, I don't really know. On the 28 service, Councillor Rigby did say that one of the issues they have is that under government legislation, they have to spend an awful lot of money on adult and child social care, which is why beyond March they can't guarantee any subsidies on the 25 or the 28 route. So this is another thing we have to be working towards as well, but certainly a Sunday service would help with that. There are 7,000 potential passengers in between Norton Fitzwarren and Copford St Luke alone, and we have quite a few people who express an interest in using the Sunday service for various reasons, but to date we've not managed to get any further. So we'll keep working on it.
That's the way. You battle away,
yes.
And eventually you can sometimes win.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dee. Thank you, Tony, before Dee as well for his comments. And in fact, thanks to everyone who's spoken. We started off with just over 40 people because the meeting's been going on for a while. There's been a certain amount of attrition. So those who are still with us, thank you very much. The message is clear. We need better, more reliable bus services, but we also need more passengers. And perhaps you can't have one without the other. You can't get better services until you've got more passengers. And you probably can't get more passengers till you've got better services.
Mm.
But what we have to do is work and try and encourage as many people to use buses for the sake of those people who have no choice. And that's the young, and it's the old, and the less well off. And that's why many of us do battle for buses, and many of the people on the call are working hard to try and get those passenger numbers up, which is what we have to try and do, working alongside Somerset Council between now and next March. Thank you very, very much for spending an hour and 45 minutes with us this evening. We will send you the slides from the evening presentation, and on YouTube we'll give you a recording if you'd like to hear everything once again. I'm not sure that's the most attractive proposition, but who knows? Some of you might like to. So many, many thanks. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your contributions, everyone.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks.